This is a ManeHustle Media podcast.
When people ask me, what is Black Radical Queer Podcast? I tell them that BRQ is a show for Black queer folks to tell our own stories on our own terms. So it's a show where we're not objects or sidekicks or props or any of those things. We are the subjects. And so we're the narrators of our own stories, as we should be. And that's radical in a world that seeks to silence us every chance they get.
All the way from the A, you listen to My Favorite Lesbian on BRQ.
Hey, stay locked in with your favorite lesbian on Black Radical Queer. Yeah.
Hey y'all, this is Javia Nicole, aka your favorite lesbian, and you're listening to Black Radical Queer Podcast, our stories on our own terms. Do you know what today is? The BRQ Anniversary. It has been 1 year, one whole year since I first launched Black Radical Queer Podcast. It's crazy to me how quickly time has passed. I just remember, wanting to do something that really focused on Black queer folks, and I am radical. So, I added that to the mix, and it has really been an awesome journey over the past year. So for this anniversary episode, I want to share with y'all just like a couple of comments, some feedback from listeners, and talk about what you can expect in your head, and just, that type of stuff. Just kind of check in with y'all and reflect on the show a little bit. So first of all, of course, thank you for listening. Just being able to see the growth of the show over the past year has been really amazing. I started out with, I would get like a couple hundred downloads, not doing too bad. And I didn't know what the growth of the show would look like. I set a goal for myself that I wanted to, by my first year, hit 10,000 downloads. I was like, hey, I think 10K is a good goal. I just want, the podcast to get out to people. And, I thought it would be dope to reach that number of individual, that number of unique downloads. So that's what I was excited about. But to reach that goal before hitting a year, I reached that goal at about the 10-month mark. So that was really awesome to be able to do that. And since then, because that was like in April. So in May, I hit 2,000 downloads for a month, which is amazing because, I remember looking at reaching 1,000 downloads in a month and being excited about that and, being amazed by that. And to see that that has doubled in less than a year's time really does not cease to blow my mind. So thank you all for continuing to support the growth of the show. It really does mean a lot to me, and I'm glad that it's serving the purpose that it needs to serve. And yeah, so we're going to keep, having episodes, keep having these conversations that are important to us, and keep BRQ growing. It's really been it's been an inspiring year. It's been really awesome to get to know you all, and the guests that I've had on the show. It's been dope to hear their stories and for them to share themselves with me and with us as a community of listeners. And it's also been cool just to see the feedback that people give on specific episodes or just on the show in general. So I just really can't. It's something that really is still kind of setting in for me. Like it hasn't fully registered. I know that I do this show on a regular basis and all that type of stuff. And, we put in the work, but it still continues to surprise me regularly. So that's really awesome. So I wanted to share with you all a couple of comments that really resonated with me from listeners. And these messages actually led to me having these particular listeners on to share their stories because, I was so grateful that the podcast had impacted them in a positive way and that they were willing to share that with me. And I just wanted to have them on and get to know more about them. So the first message is from Ray. And, you all should remember Ray from Ray's story. And this was not too long ago, maybe a couple months ago, that we had our episode and we got to know Ray better. But Ray's message just really made my whole day. It was just awesome to receive. So Ray said that your podcast has become my safe space. I'm a bit late to the game, but I have been catching up. Your podcast makes me feel seen, understood, and validated. The same feelings I got when I read Audre Lorde for the first time. Let me just pause right there because I love me some Mama Audre, Auntie Audre, whatever you want to call her. People who know me know that I have this affinity for Audre Lorde, and that my introduction to Audre Lorde was very transformative for me as a Black queer woman. And at the time, as a Black queer young person, Black queer teenager, because I was about 14 or 15 when Audre Lorde was first introduced into my world. I read Zammy and it really just, I felt seen. So, for Ray to say, oh, the feeling I got when I read Audre Lorde for the first time, I got that same feeling. And to be told that my podcast gave someone that feeling, I just could not think of a better compliment. Like, I was all in my feelings because I love me some Audre Lorde. Okay, so the rest of the comment. As a queer radical woman of the diaspora, your episodes really hit home. From Lesbian Sex Pamphlet, the first episode I listened to self-care, generational trauma, Black queer grief, empaths be like, etc., and the Q&As with your wife, I have related to you and seen pieces of myself along the way. I can't thank you enough for that. I have recently started living my truth out loud. I've been out with regards to my sexuality to my friends since I was very young, but I'm recently out to my family and publicly in a relationship with a woman. I put her onto your podcast too. She loves it too. And we came across the episodes with your wife after we started discussing marriage. Lit. That's dope to me. You are the shit. Thank you. And I will keep tuning in and listening to you share our stories. So it meant so much to me to receive that. And I felt, seen and heard in the words. And I'm just glad that the things are resonating. I got another, in my reply, really, I was just like, this is why I do this. You really made my day. And, Ray really did. I got another message from Marissa, and y'all should remember Marissa from the episode Marissa Explains It All. For some of my younger listeners, that was a play on a show called Clarissa Explains It All. Don't judge my life, but that used to be my show. And I was like, oh, that's going to be the title for the episode. But prior to me having Marissa on, she sent me a message that, again, made my day. I was telling my friends, like, oh my God, y'all, like, y'all just don't understand. So Marissa sent me a message on IG and said, I'm finally putting a face to a voice. I listen to your podcast every single day, learning more about myself and my queer identifying self. Thank you for all the insight and inspiration you bring to my life. I asked Marissa how she found the podcast. She said, I found the podcast because I've been having difficulties with my identity. I'm starting to openly accept my queerness more than ever and realize the struggle of being Black, a woman, and queer. All different struggles being lived out in one body. Girl, ain't that the truth? I looked up podcasts to gain a clearer understanding of other people's experiences and ran into yours, which is my favorite I've found yet. Yeah, I just think that's awesome. And so she goes on to say, I really, really find beauty in your show. I hope that you know the impact you have on your listeners' lives. It's so reassuring to know I'm not alone. Y'all, visibility is so important, and that's really why I started BRQ, because I feel like we need to see ourselves reflected. I always go back to this idea that I first learned of from Janet Mock, this idea of possibility models. And it's something that one of my previous guests, Karen, mentioned as well, and something that, we've discussed. So this idea that, like, there are these possibilities for us, and we can see those things reflected in the media that we consume. And so I really want for Black Radical Queer to meet that need, to be one of the things that meet that need. So it means a lot to me, for someone to say, hey, like, this show is reassuring for me. I don't feel alone, because I really don't want us to feel alone. We shouldn't. Black queer folks ain't new. Like, we've been, we ain't new to this. We true to this. So, it really is important, and makes me feel like I'm doing something right when people tell me that, hey, like, this is making me feel seen. This is making me, realize that I'm not alone in this journey. I'm not alone in this experience. And that's absolutely as it should be, because we're not islands. And, there are other people out there who can relate to the things that we're going through. And we don't have to just like navigate through those things solo. So I'm really glad that, I've gotten to utilize this as a vehicle to provide that. So I think that that's just something really amazing. I also want to share. So I reached out to y'all and, asked about like feedback on the show, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes you all will send me voicemails and, or when you send me like voicemails, messages, comments or whatever, sometimes I'll share, unless the person, has expressed like, hey, they don't want me to share. But this next message, they consented to me sharing. So I want to, take a moment to just let y'all listen to this voicemail that I received on the BRQ Google Voice line.
Wow, I can't believe it's been a year I have been listening to this podcast. I love it more and more every week. It has just been awesome to know that there are people out there that look like me, that have families like me, that have lives like me, and we actually have voices. It's just opened up the world for me in a different way, in a beautiful way, and I'm so excited to see what happens in year 2, 3 and 4 and 5, because Black Radical Queer is not going anywhere. But I just want to wish the podcast a happy first birthday. Thank you so much, Javia, for creating this safe, wonderful, radical space. I can't wait to hear the anniversary episode.
So that message was from Sarah. I've had Sarah on the show a couple times. So Sarah was on a very early episode of BRQ with Charmaine, my producer, and they were my guests talking about bisexuality. We talked about some polyamory stuff too. And so I had Sarah on then. And she was also featured on my poetry episode. Some of her poetry was on there. So thank you, Sarah, for calling in, leaving a voicemail. Thank you for listening to the show. You might be, just a tad bit biased because you know me for so long, but regardless of how long you know me, I appreciate the support and the participation and your perspective, your voice as a part of BRQ. So thank you. Next, I have a message that I received from Serene. Serene is also someone who has known me for a while, but who has been listening to the podcast and just, the message that they sent me was just awesome. And there's also something they mentioned that is kind of in the plans for the future of BRQ. So I definitely want to mention their message. So I'll read that to you all. So Serene says, this podcast has been something that the rest of this community rarely acknowledges it needs. Thank you for creating a space of relation for the Black queer community, especially for people like me who live in Atlanta and, as you know, have nothing but predominantly white and queer-centered spaces and celebrations to try to squeeze myself in. I can't wait to see what more you have in store for year 2 and beyond. Also, I know you don't often discuss current events, but with the consistent murdering of Black and of color trans women, the attack on reproductive rights, and the oxymoronic surge of gay pride and allyship from the companies and people who, during the rest of the year, couldn't care less about LGBTQ rights, let alone how to say the abbreviation correctly, I feel that there is no better platform to have the discussion about these topics. That includes on Facebook. It's something unnerving about seeing your cis friends put false, sad tear faces under stories about murder, and how we have suddenly fallen into a nightmare of a dystopian screenplay. Thank you, Javia, for being so open to us and giving us a space safe enough to be open to you. And while you're at it, tell these people to donate to a hardworking Black queer woman. So thank you, Serene, for your message. And I just wanted to mention, first of all, Serene is absolutely right in terms of some of the issues that she brought up that we're facing. And one of the things I wanted to mention is, number one, Black trans women are dying at an exponential rate. Trans women of color, especially Black trans women specifically, are being targeted and slaughtered. Like, that's what's happening. And I know I've mentioned it before, but it's a conversation that we have to continuously have because it's continuously happening. And it's unacceptable. I mean, so we have to check with our trans sisters and see what kind of support it is that they need, because they are being targeted. And please understand that, whether you are a Black trans person or not, when we look at Black queerness, like, we are not these isolated entities. And what impacts one of us impacts all of us, in regards to, we cannot all be free if there's some segment of us that is being oppressed. So it's something that we all have to work on together. Like, we all have to have a really big investment in each other's well-being. And there's really no other way that we'll be able to do this. So Serene mentioned about the current events, and something for the future of BRQ is that I do actually plan to focus more on current events, like definitely bring those things up more often, talk about things that are going on in the news, or, and it's something I've done before, but it's something that I plan to incorporate on a more consistent basis in the year ahead. So if you all see stories or whatever that you're interested in, in me talking about on BRQ, and hopefully I can also get like some of my guests to discuss these things with me. But I, for this past year, the first year, I really focused a lot on us being able to share like coming out stories, being able to share topics that have to deal with our well-being and our care. And I, to a certain extent, deliberately did not focus super heavily on current events, because we have been so inundated with all these stories of our suffering. We have this trauma porn that's put on display when it comes to us, and, showing our bodies in the streets, showing us being assaulted and harassed and discriminated against. And so I did not want for the platform to become another avenue for that to be the only thing that's circulated. However, that doesn't mean that it doesn't need to be discussed. The reality is that these things are happening to us, so we have to talk about it. And so that's something that I want to really expand on in the year ahead, is to talk more about those current stories, kind of news things, and, have conversations around that, because I think it's really important. So yeah, I think that Serene is absolutely right. I think that, these are things that we need to discuss, and that I look forward to discussing with you all. And in regards to, supporting a hardworking Black queer woman, I do appreciate the support that you all give through listening, and through whether it's like Patreon, or, any type of donations or anything like that. Those things really do help, because it is a, self-sustained show. It's just a 2-woman operation, myself and Charmaine Fury, the producer. So we're just, doing the best we can, keeping it going along, but knowing that you all are listening, knowing that it's resonating with you all. And then for those of you who do, who are able to, or who do choose to donate and things like that to support in that way, it absolutely means a lot. And it does make a difference in terms of me being able to continue to bring this, because it is something that is very important and we need. We cannot have too many avenues of expression. We cannot have too many avenues of our, of like sharing our stories, because there's such a lack in the media. There's so much lacking. We need more. People see a few shows and they're, oh, well, Pose is on and this is on. Okay, yeah, but we need more stuff like that. Having one show doesn't mean that we are all of a sudden, represented in a nuanced way. We need the full spectrum, of representation. And so I am happy to add like a little piece into the mix. And, you all's support is what makes that worthwhile. Like I mentioned before, that's what is a marker of my success for me. Because it's about all of us. It's not just about me. It's not just, it's not just about me. It's about all of us being able to share the things that are important to us and for us to really feel represented. I want for you all to truly feel represented with Black Radical Queer. Something else that I wanted to mention in regards to the show is, as you all know, I launched last year. I dropped like a promo. So this is the anniversary of like their first promo. It wasn't like a full episode, but it was really just me talking about, this is the significance of Black Radical Queer. Like, this is why I want to do it. This is why you should tune in, that type of thing. It was really just me explaining the justification behind the show. Like, why the hell am I doing this? Just kind of putting myself out there. But it was deliberate that I chose to do so on Juneteenth. And Charmaine recently asked, hey, did you, celebrate Juneteenth growing up? And, has been talking to people about Juneteenth. And the reality is, for me personally, I did not celebrate Juneteenth growing up. It's something that I learned about as an adult, but it was something that was a good date for me to launch, a date that I felt like was a fitting date to launch. So for those who don't know, I wanted to at least give you a little bit of information about Juneteenth. So that way, you can have like a little starting point and just to know about the significance of the date. And so that you kind of have a better understanding of why I chose it. And, just know a little bit more about history for those who don't know. So I am reading from Juneteenth.com. This, I feel like, is a great resource. It gives you a lot of information on the history of Juneteenth. And I'm just going to read like a little excerpt from their site about like what like the history of Juneteenth is. So Juneteenth is the oldest known celebration commemorating the ending of slavery in the United States. Dating back to 1865, it was on June 19th that the Union soldiers led by Major General Gordon Granger landed at Galveston, Texas, with news that the war had ended and that the enslaved were now free. Note that this was 2.5 years after Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, which had become official in January 1863. The Emancipation Proclamation had little impact on the Texans due to the minimal number of Union troops to enforce the new executive order. However, with the surrender of General Lee in April of 1865 and the arrival of General Granger's regiment, the forces were finally strong enough to influence and overcome the resistance. So there have been like a lot of different versions of this story. And something else that they mentioned on Juneteenth.com, they say later attempts to explain this 2.5-year delay in the receipt of this important news have yielded several versions that have been handed down through the years. Often told is the story of a messenger who was murdered on his way to Texas with the news of freedom. Another is that the news was deliberately withheld by the enslavers to maintain the labor force on the plantations. And still another is that federal troops actually waited for the slave owners to reap the benefits of one last cotton harvest before going to Texas to enforce the Emancipation Proclamation. All of which, or neither of these versions, could be true. Certainly, for some, President Lincoln's authority over the rebellious states was in question. For whatever the reasons, conditions in Texas remained status quo well beyond what was statutory. Okay, so it was a really significant date, that finally these people became aware that, hey, well, you don't have to do this anymore. And so the reason that I chose Juneteenth as a launch date is because, for one, for me, the story that I heard was about like the whole messenger thing, or just like this idea of the message getting to folks in Galveston. Because I'm like, okay, you have this whole, segment of people who did not know, folks in Texas who just were unaware of the Emancipation Proclamation. And so I thought that it was a very powerful, meaningful message of like, not just communication and freedom, but the combination of those two and like the connection between the passing along of news and communicating and this idea of being free. And so when I think about Black Radical Queer, I want it to be something that spreads a message. So it, kind of delivers the message. And it can get it to our people in a way that resonates with them. And, something that can hopefully help to be a tool in this in these efforts toward liberation. Like, you know, Black liberation is important. Black queer liberation is important. And we need all of the tools and vehicles and avenues that we can get. And I'm really, my goal for Black Radical Queer is for it to be, you know, one of the tools that we utilize in the pursuit of our liberation. And part of that being that we are able to share our stories in a way that does not other us, you know, in a way where we narrate those stories so that we can, so that that can be a liberating experience for us, you know, so that we're not forgotten, so that we take up space. You know, we take up, whether it's audio space, you know, media space, literary space, but our stories deserve to take up space. And that's what I really want to utilize this for. And so that was, for me, the significance of launching on Juneteenth, because it's like, okay, here's a time where, you know, this message was able to get to this group of people and help be a catalyst for their freedom. And that's really what I want for Black Radical Queer Podcast. So I just wanted to share that with you all. I hope that it's something that I can achieve and something that we can achieve together. So in the next year of BRQ, I mentioned that I want to focus on more current events that I think is really important. I, of course, want to have more guests on. I want to, you know, make sure that our spectrum of diversity is represented. I want to get more trans folks on the show. I want to have more folks who have families, who are like parenting, folks who work in all different types of career fields, all those. I want to showcase the breadth, I guess, the vastness of possibility models that are available to us. And so that's what I hope for in the year ahead for BRQ. If there's anything that you want to see, you know, on the show, or well, here technically on the show, then I encourage you to send it my way to let me know, because the show is for us. It's for you, and I want to make sure that, you know, you're getting out of it what you want to get out of it. And I mean, that's really all that I can say, is all that I can hope for, is that the show continues to serve you. It definitely has been fulfilling for me, and it's something that I continue to look forward to doing. Something else I would like to do is to be able to get out and about more and talk to people in person, maybe do like a meet and greet type situation, or just a live recording of the show. I want to have more conversations with y'all. And so that's something that I look forward to doing as the show continues to grow. So that's pretty much it. I know it's pretty simple, you know, pretty straightforward and short, but really this is just an episode to say, like, you know, hey, we made it. We here. We still out here, you know, in these streets doing this shit. The show is still going on, still dropping episodes, still sharing stories. We're still the narrators. We still got our own shit, and we're going to continue and grow. And I just look forward to seeing what that growth looks like in a year ahead, and look forward to getting to know you all even better, and learning your stories and sharing your stories with all of the listeners. Thank y'all for being here, rocking with me. I do feel like I'm truly your favorite lesbian because y'all are very supportive, and I just could not ask for more. And then one last thing, you know, in addition to just like the messages and everything that I received, BRQ has also received a little bit of media attention, which has been really unexpected and awesome. Apparently, so I mean, I did an interview with Voyage LA magazine, and apparently it was something that I was nominated for, because that's how they learn about the people to interview for this particular series. It's about LA's inspiring stories, and they share information about like business owners and just like movers and shakers in LA doing all types of stuff. And I have absolutely no idea who nominated me for this, but I'm grateful, and I got to do a really awesome interview with them. So if you ever want to like explain to someone like, what the hell is Black Radical Queer? Like, how did this come to be? And, you know, kind of what's it all about in a kind of short, you know, encapsulated place, then the Voyage LA article is definitely a good place to go. Or if you're just curious yourself, you know, if you're just tuning in and you're like, okay, where the hell did this shit come from? Then you can, you know, check out that interview, and I'll make sure I include a link. But to whoever nominated the podcast or nominated me to be able to have that interview, I absolutely appreciate it. It means a whole lot. And I'm grateful for Black Radical Queer having that exposure. Okay. So I know I said I was wrapping up, or if I didn't say that, I meant to say that because that's what it is. That's what the deal is. I am wrapping up. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for rocking with me for a year. Let's keep this thing going. You know, we're celebrating our first anniversary. You know, we in this thing. We committed. You know, things going good or whatever. Y'all see my crazy. You probably not in a honeymoon stage with me anymore, but you like still choose to rock with me. So I can't ask for more. I hope y'all like the new intro. It's something that I was working on. It's something I was really excited about launching for the anniversary, going into this next year of Black Radical Queer. And yeah, that's it. So thank you for tuning in. Until next time, that's it. We're going to, keep it blackity black. We're going to stay unapologetic, stay radical, queer as fuck. And, y'all the bomb. Y'all are some awesome people. Thank you. And I look forward to the next time. Hit me up on, y'all know I'm out here in these streets all over the internet. So you can contact me if there's stuff that you want for me to discuss on the show, or if you want to be on the show, hit me up, send me a message, slide in my DMs. Y'all know what the deal is. All right, y'all. Until next time, I'm out. Black Radical Queer is a ManeHustle Media podcast hosted by Javia Nicole. BRQ is produced and edited by Charmaine Fury, and the show's theme music was created by The Brothers Records. You can connect with us on Twitter or Instagram at Black Rad Queer. That's BLK RAD QWR. You can also connect with us on Facebook through the Black Radical Queer Podcast Facebook fan page or the BRQ discussion group. You can get Black Rad Queer merch on teespring.com/Black Rad Queer, BLK RAD QWR. And you can leave a voicemail, call in, ask a question, those types of things on the BRQ Google Voice line. And that number is 937-601-8647.
ManeHustle Media. Turn your side hustle into your main hustle.